Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming is joining us. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, part of the Senate GOP leadership as well. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Wolf.
Do you support the Intelligence Committee's investigation, the way it's moving forward under Senator Burr and Senator Warner?
I really do, Wolf. People, not just 100 senators, but the entire population of our country wants to know what happened with the Russians, with the election, and the committee is doing an excellent job. But also, I think this special counsel to look into this, General Mueller, who had been the head of the FBI, he is the right person to do that. So I'm comforted by the fact that this bipartisan select committee is there, as well as former FBI
So you
Director
disagree
Mueller.
with the president, who calls it a witch hunt, a hoax, a charade? You think this is a serious issue that's got to be resolved?
It has to be resolved. The American people want answers. 100 senators want to make sure that our country stays safe and secure and strong. We're committed to getting to the bottom of this, finding the answers.
And you accept the conclusion of the U.S. intelligence community and the FBI that Russia directly interfered in the election, even though we don't know what the impact was, that it was Russia that was responsible?
I absolutely believe that. I am convinced of that. And it's not just the U.S. election where they interfered. They were doing that around the world. We saw that and see it in Germany. I believe it in Britain as well as in France. They are trying to undermine democracies worldwide.
All right, let's get to some other issues. I know you're working on the Senate version of health care reform, yes, repealing and replacing Obamacare. I want you to listen to one of your colleagues, Bob Corker,
sure,
Republican, said of this process of drafting a Senate version as opposed to what the House passed. He says this, quote, "It's a very awkward process. At best, there are no experts. There is no actuarials. To me, I'd rather have the input as we move along than a bill be produced and all of a sudden it's the product and then everybody opines." How do you respond to that?
Well, Bob was in a couple of the meetings with us yesterday, including with an actuary, with people that work with the insurance industry to say, how can we lower premiums? But let's take a step back as to why we have to do this. Obamacare is collapsing. Premiums have exploded. A report just came out last night that the Obama administration never wanted the public to see. And it's the fact that the first 4 years under Obamacare, premiums around the country have doubled.
Why not fix it instead of repealing it?
Well, the question is, you can call it what you will, but it's the Obamacare rules and regulations that have caused this explosion of the premiums, that they have doubled across the country in 4 years. If you eliminate the word repeal, you'll get Democrats who will work with you to try to make it better, to improve it, and make health care for Americans better. As a doctor, I'm concerned about health care for Americans, and I'm concerned about finding ways to lower the premiums, to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but also to deal with these people that are stuck under the collapse of the Obama health care plan. In my home state of Wyoming, prices have doubled. There are a number of places where you have no choices. No one is selling when the Obamacare exchanges. So you have to say, what can we do for those people now? The Congressional Budget Office, as you know, later today is going to release its report estimating what passed in the House of Representatives, the Republican version, what that's going to cost the American public, how many people will be affected, how many people will lose health insurance. What are you bracing for? Well, I want to see what they have to say, but we know that when it came to Obamacare, they were terribly wrong in the past. They said by now there'd be over 22 million people signed up for Obamacare. It's less than half of that. Only 10 million have signed up. They also said with the individual mandate, people would go and buy Obamacare insurance. We know that over 20 million chose to ignore the individual mandate. Either over 8 million actually paid the fine, and another 12 or so million just got a deferral. It said, okay, we don't have to pay the fine. So they've been wrong before, but I want to see exactly what happens. What I do know is that prices have skyrocketed. People are afraid of what has happened to them already. That's what I heard about last weekend in Wyoming, is why am I paying double for insurance that's not right for me? Why can't I buy what's right for me rather than what Washington says I have to have? We'll see what the CBO score, as they call it, what it actually shows. So this is the revised version based on the legislation that was actually passed in the House, and now you're considering it in the Senate. I want you to listen on another sensitive subject, the president's new budget that was revealed this week. This is Senator John McCain. Okay. Your Republican friend and colleague, on Late Night with Seth Meyers. All right. Listen to this.
It says it makes massive cuts in things like Medicaid and food stamps, and our Americans who have less.
It's dead on arrival.
This budget, because I think we do forget. But ultimately, the president can only turn in a budget and you have to vote on. So it's dead on arrival.
But we do need a budget, and as much as we like to talk about the president, Congress takes us to the edge of the cliff of the next of a shutdown of the government, Grand Canyon National Park, when the great could be shut down because we can't get our act together and pass these appropriations bills to make the government function.
You agree with Senator McCain that the president's budget proposal is dead on arrival?
Well, it's just a proposal. It's a recommendation. It points to a direction. The things I like about it is that there's more money for the military. It doesn't cut our veterans. It doesn't cut Homeland Security. But it does focus on some of the domestic programs that are expensive. And we are at a point now where we are addicted to spending in the United States. It's not that we're taxed too little. It's that we spend too much. What I wish it really would do is look at the major entitlements that spend almost half the money in the country, Medicare and Social Security, and the interest on the debt.
As you know, the president during the campaign repeatedly promised, as a candidate, there would be no cuts to Social Security, no cuts to Medicare, no cuts to Medicaid. His proposal doesn't have any cuts for Social Security or Medicare, but it does have hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts in Medicaid. Are you with him on that?
Well, we need to reform all of these programs. Those are the things that are significantly contributing to the debt and the financial path that we're on. As we spend more and more money on those programs, there's less for education, there's less for roads and infrastructure, there's less for all sorts of things around the country. And we're both baby boomers. 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 today. Every time you put someone else on Medicare, which is a wonderfully successful program, and Social Security, without actually reforming these programs, that means there's less money for other things out there, which are important.
As a candidate, he said no cuts to those entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He is proposing, but Senator McCain says it's dead on arrival, his new budget. You agree it is dead on arrival, right?
Well, every president's budget that comes to Congress is just a recommendation. I think President Obama's budget, the Democrats wouldn't even vote for it. But we're going to rework and propose our own budget and deal with all the issues that are ahead of us at a time of huge debt. What we need is the economic growth. You can't necessarily cut your way through this. You have to grow your way. And his proposal, 3% economic growth, I mean, that's what we lived with here for decades until the Obama administration's time, where economic growth has really been very tepid. That cannot be the new normal for our country.
You remember the collapse of the economy happened during the Bush, at the tail end of the Bush administration, when the Great Recession occurred. So he inherited, as you remember, the President Obama,
and it's
awful,
very tepid growth after that time.
900,000 jobs a month were being lost.
We now need to get rid of a lot of the regulations that have really put a handcuff on the economy.
To see that. Let's see what happens. Senator Barrasso, as usual, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.